The day everything changed for me began with a sound I had grown far too used to, wood cracking, metal rattling, and the familiar groan of a gate that had been broken for so long it almost felt like a part of the neighborhood soundtrack. But that morning, something in the air felt different, as if the universe had stirred itself awake and leaned closer to watch. I didn't know that a simple act of stepping outside to help someone would shake loose the pieces of my life I had been quietly hiding away, pieces I didn't even know were waiting to be found. If I had known, maybe I would have hesitated. Or maybe I would have stepped out even faster. Because sometimes, the most unexpected moments hold the power to undo us, or save us. Pushpin if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us what humanity truly is. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles. Your support keeps these real, emotional stories alive. I had lived on the same street for 6 years, tucked away in a small, aging house at the corner. Life hadn't been kind to me for a long time. I had lost my job the previous year when the factory shut down without warning, and since then, everything had become a slow, grinding battle. Bills piled on top of bills. Nights stretched longer with worry. I worked odd jobs, painting fences, repairing small things, carrying boxes for people who didn't know my name. Every day felt like a quiet reminder of how far I had fallen. But I kept going because that's what life demands. You endure, even when you feel like you're breaking. My neighbor, Ms. Evans, lived 3 houses down in an old white cottage. She was older, not too old, but seasoned by life in a way that gave her a quiet strength. Her house always smelled faintly of lavender and old books, and she was one of the few people who bothered to smile at me when life made me want to hide my face. She had a softness in her eyes, something that reminded me of gentler days. But I kept my distance, partly out of respect, partly out of habit, and partly because I never imagined my existence mattered enough to enter someone else's world. That morning, as I swept my porch and pretended everything was fine, I heard her soft but urgent voice calling my name. Her gate had completely come off its hinge, leaning dangerously to the side. She looked tired, frustrated, and worried, as if the broken gate was just one more burden she had no strength left to carry. I didn't even think twice. I dropped everything and walked over because sometimes helping someone else is easier than facing your own problems. And because there's something grounding about fixing something broken, even when you feel broken yourself. The gate was worse than I expected. Years of rust had eaten away at the hinges, and the wood had splintered from constant weathering. As I lifted it, I felt the weight of not just the gate but everything I had been carrying inside myself, the disappointments, the fears, the failures. And yet I worked quietly, carefully, determined to piece it back together. Maybe because, in a strange way, saving that gate felt like saving a piece of myself too. Ms. Evans watched me with a warmth I wasn't used to. There was something in her expression, gratitude mixed with something deeper, something like understanding. She stood outside with me the entire time, offering water, asking if I needed help, telling me I was doing more than she could ever ask for. And for a brief moment, I felt seen, truly seen, like someone had peeled back the layers of silence I wore every day. When I finished, the gate stood straight, sturdy, and whole again. And she stepped closer, her voice soft but filled with emotion. She said I had done more for her than I realized, that she had been struggling alone with things I couldn't see, loss, loneliness, the quiet tremors of age that made everyday tasks harder. And then she said something that stopped me cold, something that didn't fit the pattern of my ordinary, fading life: you deserve a little extra reward. At first, I didn't know what she meant. No one had ever spoken to me like that, not with admiration, not with sincerity, not with something that almost sounded like hope. She brought out a small envelope, carefully sealed, and placed it in my hands. It was full of money, more than I expected, more than she should have given. But before I could protest, she told me her gesture wasn't payment, it was gratitude. She said that people like me, people who helped without expecting anything, deserved to know their kindness mattered in a world that often forgot it. That envelope didn't just feel like paper. It felt like someone finally telling me that I wasn't invisible. But that was only the beginning. Over the next days, she insisted on bringing me small meals she cooked herself, warm soup, fresh bread, things that tasted like home. She told me stories of her past, of dreams she still held close, of moments she had lost and moments she wished she could relive. And in return, I found myself sharing pieces of my own life I had never told anyone, my fears, my failures, my desperate attempts to rebuild my future. Somehow, without planning it, our lives began to weave together. She encouraged me to apply for a new job that I had been too scared to chase. She listened when I doubted myself. She reminded me that every broken thing, every gate, every life, could be repaired with patience and care. She became the quiet anchor I didn't know I needed. And then came the day when everything broke open. I went to her house and found her sitting quietly on the floor, holding her arm, breathing heavily. She had slipped while trying to reach a box on a high shelf. Fear surged through me. I carried her gently to a chair and stayed with her until she felt strong enough to move again. She held my hand tightly, her voice trembling as she told me that life had become harder, that she feared losing her independence, that she hadn't told anyone because she didn't want to be a burden. It was then I realized that she wasn't just someone I was helping, she was someone who needed me, someone whose world had cracks just like mine. And without thinking, I promised her that she would never have to face anything alone again. That I would always be there. That she mattered. Days turned into weeks. She healed. I found a job. My life slowly pieced itself back together. But through it all, I kept returning to her house, not because she needed repairs, but because she had become the one steady light in my life, a reminder that kindness can build bridges that even time cannot break. And one evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the sky glowed in soft shades of gold, she told me something that etched itself into my heart forever. She said that I had changed her life more than I knew, that I had brought warmth into days that had grown cold with age, that I had shown her that compassion still existed in a world that sometimes forgot it. It wasn't romance. It wasn't obligation. It was human connection in its purest form, two people who saved each other without even realizing it. She placed her hand gently on mine and whispered that the extra reward she had given me long ago was never meant to be money. It was meant to be a reminder that kindness is never wasted. She said I deserved more than I believed, respect, hope, a chance at a better life. And she was right. Because of her, I stood taller, breathed easier, and believed again. And so, my story is not about fixing a gate. It's about how one moment of compassion can unravel years of loneliness. How one act of kindness can stitch two broken lives together in the most unexpected way. And how sometimes, the people we help, end up saving us right back.